Commander HFY sat in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. The massive room could hold thousands, but today only the most important leaders were present. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the curved seats that rose up like steps around the central speaking area. HFY's blue scales were not as bright as they once were. Dark scars crossed his face and arms. His military uniform hung loose on his thin frame. 6 months ago, he had been the pride of the Valorian Imperial Fleet. He commanded 12,000 of the finest warriors in the galaxy. Now, only 847 of those warriors were still alive. The council members whispered among themselves as they looked at him. Many had heard rumors about what happened at the human colony. Few believed the stories. Humans were new to space travel. They had no claws, no natural armor, no poison fangs. They were small and weak compared to most galactic species. How could such creatures defeat the mighty Valorian fleet? High Chancellor Mordak of the Threnody Empire leaned forward in his seat, his 4 arms crossed as his red eyes fixed on HFY. Commander, you stand before this council with claims that seem impossible. You say that humans destroyed 90% of your fleet. These same humans who only discovered spaceflight 200 years ago? 8. HFY nodded slowly. His voice was quiet but clear. Yes, High Chancellor. I know how it sounds. 6 months ago, I would not have believed it either. Then explain, said Counselor Vexera, her snake-like head swaying as she spoke. Tell us how the weakest species in known space could defeat Valorian warriors. HFY stood up straight. Even weakened, he was an impressive figure. His species was known throughout the galaxy as natural fighters. Valorians had conquered dozens of worlds over the centuries. Their military tactics were studied in war colleges across the stars. We went to Kepler 442b thinking we were hunting prey. HFY began. Our intelligence reports said the planet held 50,000 human colonists. Farmers and miners, mostly. No military bases. No orbital defenses. It should have been simple. He paused and looked around the room. Many of the council members were taking notes on their data pads. Others watched him with curious expressions. The Valorian High Command chose this target carefully, he continued. We wanted to test human defenses before moving to more important worlds. Earth had refused to join the Galactic Federation. They claimed they needed more time to prepare. We saw this as weakness. Chancellor Mordak made a sound that might have been laughter. So you decided to force them to join? The plan was to capture the colony quickly, HFY said. Take prisoners. Show the humans that resistance was useless. Then we would offer them a choice. Join the Federation under Valorian protection, or face the full power of our empire. Counselor Zilfex, whose crystal body sparkled in the chamber's lights, spoke up. A standard intimidation campaign. Your species has used this tactic many times before. Yes, HFY agreed. It had always worked. Until we met the humans. The room grew quiet. Everyone waited for him to continue. We jumped into the Kepler system with 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and 200 support vessels, HFY said. The humans had no space fleet waiting for us. No defense platforms. Their orbital stations sent out distress signals, but there was no attempt to fight us in space. As expected, muttered Counselor Hresh, whose bear-like form filled his oversized seat. We thought so too, HFY said. I ordered the standard attack pattern. 3 dreadnoughts would move into high orbit and begin bombardment of military targets. The rest of the fleet would form a blockade to prevent escape ships from leaving the planet. He paused again, his hands gripping the speaking podium. That's when we learned our first lesson about humans. They don't surrender when they should. Several council members shifted in their seats. This was not what they expected to hear. The orbital bombardment began at 0800 hours, ship time, HFY continued. We targeted what our sensors showed were communication centers and power plants, standard procedure to blind and weaken the enemy. But something was wrong. On brain. What do you mean? Asked Chancellor Mordak. The humans kept transmitting, HFY said. Even after we destroyed their main communication arrays, signals kept coming from the planet. We realized they had backup systems hidden everywhere. Multiple backups for every important system. Counselor Vexara's forked tongue flicked out as she tasted the air. Redundant systems are not unusual. Not like this, HFY shook his head. Every farm had communication equipment. Every mine had its own power generator. It was like they had built their entire colony, expecting it to be attacked. The chamber was completely silent now. The implications of what he was saying were starting to sink in. Then came the ships, HFY said, his voice growing softer. We detected movement in the asteroid belt. Ships were coming toward us. Many ships. Their hidden fleet? Asked Counselor Zilfex. No, HFY said. Cargo haulers. Mining ships. Even old passenger liners that must have been 100 years old. Nothing that should have worried a military fleet. High Chancellor Mordak leaned back in his seat. But they worried you. They should have been running away from us, HFY said. Instead, they were coming straight at our dreadnoughts. At maximum speed. No formation. No tactics. Just charging directly into our weapons range. The room was so quiet that the soft hum of the air recycling systems could be heard. I ordered warning shots, HFY continued. Standard procedure when civilian ships approach a military blockade. One of our cruisers fired across the bow of the leading cargo hauler. And they turned away? Chancellor Mordak asked. HFY's blue face had gone pale. No. They fired back. See, murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Civilian ships attacking military vessels was unheard of in civilized warfare. Not with military weapons, HFY added quickly. They used mining charges, industrial cutting lasers, anything they could mount on their hulls. The damage was minimal. But what, Commander? Pressed Counselor Vexara. HFY looked directly at her. But they kept coming. Even when we returned fire. Even when their ships started exploding around them. They never stopped coming. The silence in the chamber was complete. Every representative stared at the scarred Valorian commander as he continued his impossible tale. That was when I realized we were not fighting a normal enemy, HFY said. We had come expecting to find prey. Instead, we had found something that refused to be hunted. The cargo ships kept coming. HFY watched from the bridge of his flagship as the human vessels closed the distance to his fleet. His weapons officers asked for permission to destroy them. But something made him hesitate. Sir, they're on collision course with the Sword of Valoris, his tactical officer reported. HFY stared at the main screen. A human cargo hauler, its hull already damaged from his fleet's warning shots, was heading straight for one of his dreadnoughts. The ship was venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. Its engines were firing at maximum power. Signal that ship, HFY ordered. Tell them to change course or be destroyed. The communications officer tried several times. No response, Commander. They're not even trying to communicate. Destroy it, HFY said finally. The Sword of Valoris fired its main cannon. The massive energy beam cut through the cargo hauler like it was made of paper. The ship broke apart in a brilliant flash, but the explosion was not normal. The cargo hauler had been carrying something that made it burn much brighter and longer than expected. Scan those ships, HFY ordered. Find out what they're carrying. His science officer worked quickly. Sir, they're loaded with industrial chemicals. Fuel. Some kind of mining explosives. It's like they turned their cargo holds into bombs. More human ships were approaching. HFY counted at least 30 vessels of different sizes, all of them flying directly at his fleet with no regard for their own safety. This is madness, his first officer said. They must know they can't win. Maybe they're not trying to win, HFY replied quietly. Maybe they're trying to send a message. 3 more cargo ships reached his fleet before his gunners could stop them. 2 crashed into cruisers, their explosive cargoes ripping holes in the military vessel's armor. The 3rd ship somehow managed to ram the engine section of another dreadnought. Damage report, HFY called out. The Blade of Truth has lost main power, his tactical officer replied. The Stormbringer and the Night's Edge have hull breaches on multiple decks. We have casualties, but the ships are still functional. HFY looked at the display showing his fleet. Red warning lights marked the damaged vessels. More human ships were still coming from the asteroid belt. How many of their ships are still operational down there? He asked. Unknown, sir. They're using some kind of stealth technology. Our sensors keep losing track of them. 21. The truth was simpler than his officers realized. The humans were not using advanced stealth. They were just very good at hiding among the asteroids and using the natural radiation of space to mask their movements. Sir, incoming transmission from the planet's surface, the communications officer announced. Put it through. A human face appeared on the screen. It was an older woman, with gray hair and tired eyes. She wore simple farming clothes. Not a military uniform. This is Governor Martinez of Kepler Colony, she said. I'm speaking for all 50,000 residents of this world. I am Commander HFY of the Valorian Imperial Fleet, he replied. You will surrender immediately, or face destruction. The woman smiled, but it was not a happy expression. Commander, I want you to understand something. We know we can't beat your fleet in a straight fight. We know most of us are going to die today. HFY felt confused. If they knew they would lose, why were they fighting? But here's what you don't understand, Governor Martinez continued. We're not fighting to win. We're fighting to make sure you remember us. We're fighting to make sure every other human world knows what you did here. Surrender now, and your people will be treated well, HFY said. No, the woman said simply. We choose how this ends. The transmission cut off. HFY stared at the blank screen. In 300 years of military service, he had never heard a leader refuse surrender when facing impossible odds. Sir, we're detecting movement on the planet's surface, his sensor operator reported. Multiple launch signatures. Missiles? HFY asked. Negative, sir. They appear to be escape pods? HFY frowned. They're evacuating? I don't think so, sir. The pods are not heading for the outer system. They're coming up to orbital altitude, and then stopping. Show me. The main screen displayed dozens of small craft rising from the planet. But instead of fleeing to safety, they were spreading out around the planet in a defensive formation. What are they doing? His first officer asked. Building a minefield, HFY realized. They're using their own escape pods as mines. It was brilliant and terrifying at the same time. The humans were sacrificing their only means of escape to create obstacles for his fleet. Begin ground assault, HFY ordered. Deploy all landing craft. I want that planet secured within 6 hours. 200 Valorian dropships launched from his fleet. Each one carried 50 warriors in full combat armor. Against farmers and miners, it should have been easy. The first wave of landing craft reached the planet without resistance. HFY began to think the humans had finally come to their senses. Then the reports started coming in. Landing Zone Alpha is under attack, the ground commander radioed. Heavy resistance from entrenched positions. Landing Zone Beta reports multiple casualties, another voice said. The humans have turned the entire mining complex into a fortress. Landing Zone Gamma has. Sir, they've collapsed the mine shafts under our positions. Half my company is trapped underground. HFY listened to the reports with growing alarm. These were not the actions of frightened civilians. These people had been planning for this attack. Sir, I'm getting reports that the humans are not wearing uniforms, his communications officer said. Our troops can't tell the difference between soldiers and civilians, because there is no difference. HFY said quietly. They're all soldiers now. The ground battle continued for hours. Every building had to be taken by force. Every street was defended. The humans used their knowledge of the terrain to devastating effect. They had booby-trapped their own homes and businesses. Commander, we've reached the central settlement, his ground commander finally reported. But sir, there's something you need to know. Report, HFY said. The civilians we've captured, sir. The oldest one we've found is barely 16 years old, and the youngest is maybe 8. Whine. Where are the adults? Fighting, sir. All of them. Every single adult human on this planet has taken up weapons against us. We're not fighting an army. We're fighting an entire population. HFY felt a chill run down his spine. He had conquered many worlds, but he had never faced anything like this. Usually, when military resistance broke, civilian resistance ended. But on this world, there seemed to be no difference between the two. "Sir, urgent message from the fleet," his communications officer called out. "What now?" HFY asked. "Long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships jumping into the outer system. Human vessels, sir. It looks like reinforcements are coming." HFY looked at the tactical display. His fleet was damaged and scattered. Half his ground forces were pinned down on the planet's surface. And now, more human ships were arriving. "How many ships?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. They're coming out of hyperspace in small groups, different vectors. It's like they're surrounding us." HFY realized that his simple mission to intimidate a farming colony had become something much more dangerous. The humans were not behaving like any other species he had fought. They were not following any of the rules of civilized warfare. And somehow, that made them far more dangerous than any enemy he had ever faced. The human reinforcement ships were not what HFY expected. As they came closer, his sensors revealed the truth. These were not military vessels, they were research ships, luxury liners, cargo haulers, even old colony ships that looked like they had been flying for centuries. "Sir, I'm counting over 200 vessels," his tactical officer reported. "But none of them match our military ship profiles. Are they armed?" HFY asked. "Some appear to have weapons, but they're mostly improvised. Mining lasers, construction equipment, even what looks like modified farming tools." HFY watched the approaching fleet with growing unease. The ships moved in small groups, never more than 5 or 6 together. They did not follow standard military formations. Instead, they spread out like they were surrounding his fleet. "Commander, incoming transmission from the lead human vessel," his communications officer announced. "Put it through." A new human face appeared on the screen. This one was younger than Governor Martinez, with short, dark hair and the kind of scars that came from working with dangerous machinery. "This is Captain Santos of the freighter New Horizon," the human said. "You have attacked our people. You will leave this system now." "I am Commander HFY of the Valorian Imperial Fleet," he replied. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender or be destroyed." Captain Santos looked directly at him through the screen. "Commander, let me explain something about humans. We don't abandon our own. Ever." The transmission ended. "Sir, the human ships are moving to attack positions," his tactical officer warned. "All ships, prepare for combat," HFY ordered. But the humans did not attack the way he expected. Instead of forming battle lines and fighting in organized groups, they scattered. Small groups of human ships would appear from different directions, attack quickly, then disappear again before his fleet could respond. "It's like fighting ghosts," his first officer complained. "Every time we target them, they're already gone." On the planet below, the ground battle was becoming even stranger. HFY's troops reported that the human resistance was changing its tactics almost by the hour. "Sir, they've learned to target our communication systems," his ground commander reported. "Somehow they figured out our radio frequencies and they're jamming our signals." "How is that possible?" HFY asked. "Our encryption should be unbreakable." "They're not trying to break the code, sir. They're just making so much noise on our frequencies that we can't talk to each other." An hour later, another report came in. "Commander, the humans have started using our own weapons against us. They're collecting guns from fallen soldiers and somehow figured out how to use them." HFY felt a growing sense of dread. Valorian weapons were designed specifically for Valorian physiology. The fact that humans could adapt them for their own use meant they were learning incredibly fast. "Sir, we just lost contact with the 3rd Battalion." The ground commander's voice was strained. Their last message said the humans had surrounded them in some kind of underground tunnel system. "Send reinforcements," HFY ordered. "Sir, I've been trying. But every time we send troops to help, The humans seem to know exactly where we're going. It's like they can read our minds. Ah, the truth was simpler and more frightening. The humans were not reading minds. They were just very good at predicting how their enemies would behave. After centuries of fighting each other, humans understood warfare in ways that other species did not. In space, the harassment attacks continued. HFY's fleet was slowly being worn down by the constant hit-and-run attacks. But it was not just the damage that worried him, it was the way the human attacks were becoming more effective. "Sir, they just hit the Star Crusher with some kind of modified mining charge," his tactical officer reported. "It punched right through our armor." "How did they know where to aim?" HFY demanded. "They seem to have figured out the weak points in our ship designs. They're targeting specific areas where our armor is thinnest." HFY stared at the tactical display. The humans had been fighting his fleet for less than 12 hours, but somehow they had already learned the weaknesses of ships that had taken Valorian engineers decades to design. Then came the report that changed everything. "Commander, urgent message from the ground," his communications officer said. "Colonel Thekmore is dead." HFY felt the bridge go silent. Colonel Thekmore was one of the finest warriors in the Valorian military. He had led successful campaigns on a dozen worlds. "How?" HFY asked. "Sniper, sir. Human sniper." "But sir, that's not the worst part." "What do you mean?" "The humans recorded his death, sir. They're broadcasting it on all frequencies. They want our troops to see it." HFY closed his eyes. Psychological warfare was not unknown in galactic conflicts, but the humans were using it in ways he had never seen before. "There's more, sir," the communications officer continued. "The humans who killed Colonel Thekmore. They didn't retreat afterward. They stayed in position and kept fighting until our troops overran their position." "They died for one kill?" HFY's first officer sounded confused. "No, sir. They died to send a message. They wanted us to know that they could kill our best officers anytime they wanted. On the planet, the situation was getting worse by the hour." HFY's troops reported that the human civilians were not fleeing from the fighting. Instead, they were helping the resistance fighters in any way they could. "Sir, we've captured several human children," his ground commander reported. "But they won't tell us anything. The youngest one just keeps asking when her parents are coming back." "Where are her parents?" HFY asked. "Fighting, sir. Both of them. We killed the father 3 hours ago. The mother is still out there somewhere." HFY felt sick. He had fought many wars, but he had never fought an enemy where every single person was willing to die rather than surrender. "Commander, I need to report something else," his ground commander continued. "The humans are. They're working together in ways we've never seen." "Explain." "When we kill their leaders, new leaders step forward immediately. When we destroy one of their communication posts, they route their signals through backup systems we didn't even know existed. It's like they're all connected somehow." In space, the human harassment attacks were becoming coordinated in disturbing ways. Multiple groups of human ships would attack different parts of his fleet at exactly the same time. "Sir, how are they coordinating these attacks?" his tactical officer asked. "We've jammed all the communication frequencies we can detect." "Maybe they're using frequencies we don't know about," HFY suggested. "Or maybe they don't need to communicate at all," his first officer said quietly. "Maybe they just understand each other." HFY thought about that possibility. Most galactic species fought as individuals or in small groups. Even the most disciplined armies required constant communication and leadership to function. But the humans seemed to work together instinctively. When one group attacked from the left, another group automatically attacked from the right. When one ship was destroyed, its companions immediately moved to cover the gap it left behind. "Sir, urgent signal from the fleet," his communications officer announced. "The Dreadstar reports they've been boarded." "Impossible," HFY said. "No human ship got close enough to launch boarding pods." "Sir, they didn't use pods. Somehow they used EVA suits to cross open space and cut through the hull." HFY stared at his tactical display. The idea of crossing the vacuum of space in just a protective suit to attack a military vessel was beyond anything he could imagine. "How many boarders?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. but the Dreadstar reports they're fighting hand-to-hand in the corridors. Minutes later, the Dreadstar went silent. "Sir, we've lost contact with them completely," his communications officer reported. "Are they destroyed?" HFY asked. "No, sir. The ship is still there. It's still moving. But it's not responding to our signals." "You mean the humans captured it?" "I think so, sir." HFY realized that his fleet was not just being attacked, it was being hunted. The humans were picking off his ships one by one, learning his tactics, adapting to his strategies faster than he could change them. And the most terrifying part was that they seemed to be enjoying it. 3 days into the battle, HFY's fleet was in trouble. He had lost 6 ships completely, and another dozen were badly damaged. His ground forces controlled less than half of the human colony, and even that was constantly under attack. But the worst was yet to come. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting more ships entering the system," his tactical officer reported. "How many?" HFY asked, though he was afraid of the answer. "Unknown, sir. They're coming out of hyperspace in multiple waves. Different entry points. It's like they're coming from everywhere." "And Hera?" "Unknown, sir." HFY watched his tactical display as red dots appeared across the system. First dozens, then hundreds of ships were dropping out of hyperspace. They came from all directions, making it impossible to predict where the next group would appear. "Ship identification?" he asked. "Sir, these are like nothing we've seen before," his sensor operator replied. "Some of them are huge, colony ships maybe, others are tiny, barely bigger than fighters. There are ships here that look like they were built centuries ago, and others that appear to be brand new. Are they military vessels?" "Some are, sir, but most appear to be civilian ships that have been modified for combat." HFY felt a cold fear growing in his chest. "How many total?" "Still counting, sir. But I estimate over 1,000 ships so far, and more are still arriving." The scale of the human response was beyond anything HFY had imagined. This was not just a local defense force. This was an entire civilization mobilizing for war. "Sir, incoming transmission," his communications officer announced. "Put it through." This time, the face on the screen was different. An older human man in what looked like a military uniform, but not one that HFY recognized. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force," the woman said. "You have attacked our people. You will withdraw immediately." "I am Commander HFY," he replied. "Your forces are no match for the Valorian Empire. Surrender now, and avoid further bloodshed." Admiral Chen smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "Commander, let me explain something about human nature. We have a saying on Earth, don't start a fight you can't finish. You started this fight. Now we're going to finish it. You cannot hope to defeat the entire Valorian Empire," HFY said. "We don't need to defeat your empire," Chen replied. "We just need to make sure you never attack another human world again." The transmission ended, and immediately the human fleet began to move. But they did not attack in the way HFY expected. Instead of rushing straight into battle, the human ships spread out through the system. Some moved to defensive positions around the planet. Others began establishing what looked like supply bases on asteroids and moons. "Sir, they're not trying to destroy us," his first officer observed. "They're trying to trap us." "What do you mean?" HFY asked. "Look at their positioning. They've cut off all our escape routes. We can't retreat without fighting through their entire fleet." HFY studied the tactical display and realized his first officer was right. The humans had positioned their ships so that his fleet was surrounded. But more than that, they had done it in a way that made it impossible for him to attack any single group without exposing his ships to attack from multiple directions. "It's a hunting formation," he said quietly. "Sir, they're not trying to fight us ship to ship," HFY explained. "They're hunting us like pack animals. They want to wear us down slowly until we're too weak to fight back." Over the next several hours, the human strategy became clear. They would send small groups of ships to attack different parts of his fleet. When HFY moved ships to defend against one attack, the humans would strike somewhere else. But the attacks were not random. Each one targeted a specific weakness in his fleet's formation. The humans seemed to understand exactly how his ships worked together. and how to disrupt that cooperation. Sir, they're jamming our communications again, his communications officer reported. But this time they're not just making noise. They're broadcasting something. What kind of transmission? Music, sir. Human music. But it's not random. They're timing it to interfere with our tactical coordination. HFY listened as strange human sounds filled his bridge. The music was rhythmic and loud, making it hard for his officers to concentrate on their duties. Sir, there's something else. The communications officer continued. They're also broadcasting recordings of our troops on the planet. Combat chatter, casualty reports, even personal messages from our soldiers to their families. How did they get those recordings? HFY demanded. They must have been monitoring our communications from the beginning, sir. They've been learning our language, our protocols, everything about how we operate. The psychological effect on his crew was immediate and devastating. Hearing their own soldiers' voices coming from the enemy was deeply disturbing to Valorian warriors who were used to fighting in honorable combat. On the planet, the situation had become a nightmare. HFY's ground forces reported that they could no longer tell who was a combatant and who was a civilian. Sir, we've secured the main settlement, his ground commander reported. But every building we search has hidden tunnels and passages. The humans keep appearing behind our lines. How many casualties? HFY asked. We've lost 30% of our ground forces, sir. But that's not the worst part. What do you mean, sir? The humans are not taking prisoners. When our soldiers surrender, the humans they don't accept it. They keep fighting until one side or the other is dead. HFY felt his stomach turn. In civilized warfare, surrender was always accepted. It was one of the basic rules that separated military action from simple murder. There's something else, sir, his ground commander continued. Pictures? Of their families, sir. Children, mostly. They all carry pictures of their children. HFY closed his eyes. He understood now what they were fighting. These humans were not soldiers in the traditional sense. They were parents defending their young. And there was nothing more dangerous in the galaxy than a species protecting its offspring. Sir, urgent report from the fleet, his tactical officer announced. The humans have captured 3 more of our ships. Destroyed? HFY asked. No, sir. Captured. They're using some kind of boarding technique we've never seen before. Small groups of humans in vacuum suits attach to our ships and cut their way inside. How are they surviving in vacuum long enough to reach our ships? Unknown, sir. But once they're inside, they move through our ships faster than our security teams can respond. It's like they know exactly where to go. The truth was that humans had been preparing for space combat much longer than anyone realized. They had studied every alien ship design they could find and had learned the common features that most species used. Sir, the captured ships are now attacking our formation, his tactical officer continued. HFY watched in horror as his own vessels, now under human control, began firing on his fleet. The humans were not just defeating his ships, they were turning them against him. How many ships do we have left? He asked quietly. 43 ships still under our control, sir. But many of them are damaged. Out of a fleet of more than 250 vessels, only 43 remained. And the humans showed no signs of slowing their attacks. Sir, incoming message from Admiral Chen, his communications officer announced. The human admiral appeared on his screen again. This time, her expression was different. Not angry or threatening, but something worse. She looked almost sad. Commander HFY, she said, I want you to understand something. This doesn't have to continue. You can end this right now. What are your terms? HFY asked. Leave, Chen said simply. Leave our system, leave our space, and never come back. We will allow your surviving ships to depart safely. And if I refuse? Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. Then we will follow you home, Commander. We will follow you to every Valorian world, every Valorian base, every Valorian ship in space. And we will make sure that everyone knows what happens to species that attack human civilians. You're threatening to wage war against my entire empire? No, Commander, Chen said quietly. We're promising to hunt your species across the galaxy until you learn to leave us alone. Humans are very good at holding grudges, and we have very long memories. The transmission ended, and HFY stared at the blank screen. He realized that he was not just facing defeat in this battle. He was facing the possibility that his entire species would be hunted to extinction by these relentless humans. HFY made his choice. With less than 40 ships remaining, and no hope of victory, he contacted Admiral Chen and accepted her terms. The humans would allow his surviving forces to leave the system safely, but as his battered fleet prepared to retreat, something strange happened. Sir, the human ships are moving, his tactical officer reported. They're forming a corridor for us to fly through. A corridor? HFY asked. Yes, sir. They've positioned their ships to create a clear path from our location to the hyperspace jump point. HFY watched the display as hundreds of human vessels moved into formation. They were not blocking his escape route. They were guiding him toward it. Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Chen, his communications officer announced. The human admiral appeared on his screen one final time. Commander HFY, before you leave, I want to give you something to remember us by. What do you mean? HFY asked. Your cargo holds are being loaded with data files, Chen explained. Information about human colonies, our military capabilities, our technology. Everything your leaders will need to understand what they're dealing with. You're giving us intelligence about your own forces? We want your empire to know exactly what will happen if they attack us again, Chen said. We want them to understand that what happened here was not a lucky victory. It was a demonstration. HFY felt a chill run down his spine. A demonstration of what? Of what happens when you threaten our families, Chen replied. Commander, you need to understand something about humans. We don't fight for territory or resources or glory. We fight for each other. And when someone threatens the people we love, we become something your species has never encountered before. What is that? HFY asked quietly. We become relentless, Chen said. We will follow our enemies across the galaxy. We will learn their weaknesses. We will turn their own weapons against them. And we will never, ever stop until the threat is eliminated. As his fleet moved through the corridor of human ships, HFY noticed something that made his blood run cold. The humans were not celebrating their victory. They watched his ships pass in complete silence. Their weapons were powered down, but their sensors tracked every movement. Sir, we're receiving additional transmissions, his communications officer reported. Text messages from the human fleet. What do they say? Just coordinates, sir. Star charts showing the locations of Valorian military bases, trade routes, colony worlds. It's like they already know everything about our empire. HFY realized the terrible truth. The humans had not just been defending this one colony. They had been gathering intelligence about his entire species. They knew where to find every Valorian world, every military installation, every trade route. They've been planning this, he said quietly. Planning what, sir? His first officer asked. The war, HFY replied. They've been planning for a war with us since the first time our species made contact. This attack wasn't the beginning. It was just the excuse they needed. As his fleet reached the hyperspace jump point, one final message came from Admiral Chen. Commander, I want you to deliver a message to your leaders, she said. Tell them that Earth remembers its friends and never forgets its enemies. We don't seek conquest. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left in peace. And if we leave you in peace? HFY asked. Then you'll have nothing to fear from us, Chen replied. But if any species attacks human civilians again, we will respond the same way we responded today. We will bring the full force of humanity to bear against that threat. How can 50,000 colonists threaten an entire galactic empire? HFY demanded. Because we're not just 50,000 colonists, Commander, Chen said. We're part of something bigger. Every human world is connected. Every human ship is part of our fleet. Every human citizen is a potential soldier. When you attacked this colony, you attacked all of humanity. The transmission ended, and HFY's fleet jumped to hyperspace. Now, 6 months later, HFY stood before the Galactic Council and finished his testimony. The Great Chamber was completely silent as the representatives absorbed what they had heard. High Chancellor Mordak was the first to speak. "Commander, you're telling us that the humans deliberately allowed you to escape?" "Yes, High Chancellor," HFY replied. "We were not survivors of a battle. We were messengers carrying a warning." "But why would they do that?" asked Counselor Vex Ara. "Because they wanted the galaxy to know what happens to species that attack human civilians," HFY explained. "They could have destroyed my entire fleet. Instead, they chose to send us home with a message." Counselor Zilfex leaned forward in her crystal chair. "What was the message?" "That humanity is not like other species," HFY said. "Most races fight for resources or territory or political advantage. Humans fight for concepts that most of us consider abstract luxuries. Freedom, justice, protection of the innocent. And that makes them dangerous?" Chancellor Mordak asked. "It makes them unstoppable," HFY replied. "When you threaten something they care about, they don't calculate odds or consider costs. They simply respond with everything they have." The chamber erupted in whispered conversations as the council members discussed what they had heard. "Commander," Counselor Hresh said in his deep voice, "in your opinion, what should the Galactic Federation's policy be toward humanity?" HFY thought carefully before answering. "Leave them alone," he said finally. "Give them the space and time they need to develop as a species. Treat them as equals, not as primitives to be conquered or controlled." "And if we do this," Chancellor Mordak asked, "then humanity might become our greatest ally," HFY said. "But if we try to force them to submit, they will become our deadliest enemy." 8. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Council officially designated human space as a protected research zone. No military vessels would be allowed to enter human territory without express permission. Trade and diplomatic contact would be limited to neutral stations on the borders of human space. Officially, this was to allow humanity to develop without interference. Unofficially, it was a quarantine to contain the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. As the council session ended, Chancellor Mordak approached HFY privately. "Commander, do you believe the humans will honor this agreement?" he asked. "As long as we honor it first," HFY replied. "Humans are capable of great friendship or terrible vengeance. The choice is ours." "What will you do now?" the Chancellor asked. HFY looked out through the great windows of the council chamber at the stars beyond. "I will return to Valoris Prime and recommend that my empire never again attempt to conquer a human world." "Because they're too dangerous?" "Because they're too much like us," HFY said quietly. "They fight for their families, their homes, their beliefs. The only difference is that they're better at it than we are." As HFY left the council chamber, he carried with him the weight of his testimony. He had warned the galaxy about humanity's military capabilities, but he had also revealed something else. In all his years of warfare, HFY had never encountered a species that fought not for conquest or glory, but simply to protect the people they loved. It was a type of warfare that was both primitive and advanced, simple and terrifyingly effective. The humans had taught the galaxy an important lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is not the one who wants to rule you, but the one who simply wants to be left alone. And as word of the Kepler incident spread through galactic space, other species began to understand that humanity was not just another member race to be absorbed into the galactic community. They were something new, something that had never existed in the galaxy before. They were a species that would go to any length, pay any price, and face any odds to protect their own. And that made them the most dangerous allies and the most terrible enemies that the galaxy had ever known.